Good afternoon, YouTube. This is Kelsey from Kels Reads Things, also known as Librarians Recommend at Anna Porter Public Library in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And I'm making this video today to kind of give you a little more of an introduction to me. And I'm also going to be discussing not only myself and my experience in librarianship, the career path specifically, but also kind of let you know about the book genres that I prefer to read and that I recommend, and also how my interests are starting to expand and what I look forward to reading in the future. Okay, so those who are curious, my name is Kelsey, as I just mentioned. I have actually been in the librarianship pathway now for going on 8 years. I began my career in librarianship. I say career, I actually started off as an intern when I was 21 back in 2012. I worked in my small town's public library to be their summer intern. And basically what that entailed was putting up the children's books that were returned during the summer reading program. Because though it was a small town, we actually had a surprising amount of participants for our summer reading program, which was excellent and wonderful, and why they needed to hire on an extra person, me, to help with the responsibility of putting all the books away. And I learned in that position that librarianship isn't just about books. In fact, it's far from just about books. In fact, my favorite experience was teaching people how to use their email or even create one, help them learn a new skill with any kind of technology that they might bring in, be it a Kindle, be it a tablet, doesn't really matter. My favorite aspect to this day and from that summer was being able to help people understand their technology, their devices, and let them learn a new skill. Because you can teach an old dog new tricks. It doesn't matter your age, you're always capable of learning something new. And as a librarian, it's our job to be patient and to kind of give you step-by-step guidelines on how to utilize the technology that you have. So that was definitely stayed with me, and it made me realize after that first summer that I wanted to continue with librarianship. So I graduated from Bethel University in McKenzie, Tennessee in 2014, and by 2016 I was working at a library again. It's when I got hired on by Kenton Tipple to work as the Youth Services Assistant at Anna Porter Public Library, and I have been here ever since. I moved my way up from Assistant Youth Services to Youth Services person to Assistant Director, and now finally I am the Director, and I could not be prouder or happier to be where I am today. So that's just a little bit of information about me and my background and why I pursued librarianship. I originally was just excited to be surrounded by books and to be discussing books with people, but as I said before, I gained and learned so much more about what librarians can offer. So, and if you're unsure of all the things that your library can do, I recommend you go to their website, give them a call, and find out the resources, services, and programs that they have available for you today. You might be surprised at everything that's out there. And I'm going to take this time to just mention 2 services that I know that are wonderful and people really benefit from them, and they're even just recreational too, rather than just informative. The first one is Libby. It is a reading app. It offers free ebooks and audiobooks. You can listen to these books on any of your smart devices, or you can read them on any of your smart devices. And considering the current uncertain health climate, a lot of these resources are becoming even more accessible than they were previously. So that's wonderful. And also there's the Tennessee Electronic Library website. And it's basically just a library online. There are all kinds of resources there, including how to create a resume, including helping you find job resources, even jobs that are available are on this website. There's also resources for students, teachers, and other librarians, and even just your everyday Joe who might be interested in learning about whales that day. So I highly recommend the Tennessee Electronic Library. It is wonderful. Okay, Now, I'm finally going to discuss my favorite genres to read. And I will just preface that with saying that a lot of times, every couple of years or so, my interests lean into something that I haven't been interested in before. For instance, back in the mid 2010s, I was really into dystopian literature. And I think part of that definitely had to do with the fact that everyone was into dystopian literature at the time, especially young adult books. In the last couple of years, I was very interested in mysteries and suspense books. Some of my favorites were The Girl on the Train. Let's see, there were a few others that I can't think of right up top the head on my head right now, but I was really into mysteries specifically. River Road is another one, and I'm sure I'll think of more that I can mention in my future videos. Okay, I'm also really, right now, I am really interested in romance. Last year I was mostly only read romance books, whether they be romantic comedies, whether they be just contemporary, whether they be more adult content. I was just very interested in romance and characters and their dynamics specifically. And this year, I'm trying to expand my horizons a little bit. I recently read A Dress for the Wicked, and I really do enjoy young adult books, but I have actually veered away from historical fiction for a long time. It just wasn't a subject that interested me as much as it had in the past. However, because I read A Dress for the Wicked by Autumn Cross, I have started to kind of reconsider my interest in that area, and I am actually planning on rereading the Lux series at some point this year by Alex Godberson. So there's about 4 of these. I think this is just a 3-book set, but there are 4 of them. So I look forward to eventually reading those and discussing them with you. I also am interested in classics, mostly American Gothic, though. I really loved Silence of the Lambs, pretty much anything written by Stephen King, including The Shining. I was really interested in just kind of the dark elements of these books. It just fascinated me, honestly, it just did. And my interests change quite often in terms of what I'm reading. I also have come to really appreciate contemporary. For instance, some of my absolute favorite contemporary reads are Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, I did a video on that previously. I want to say it was one of my first books that I reviewed for YouTube, and I have read it since 2014, 13, and it's continued to be a favorite of mine. I will probably continue to reread it every year to every couple of years or so. Another contemporary with a little bit of a magical element by Rainbow Rowell, again, is Landline. I also recommend that one, and instead of being a young adult / new adult book, it is actually a regular adult fiction book with little to no adult content, so it's definitely appropriate for all audiences. Okay, and a new contemporary that I enjoy that has also a little bit of a magical element was Again But Better. And I can't off the top of my head remember the author's name, but she is a big booktuber, so I will include her channel in my bio when I upload this video. Okay, as for romance and romance comedies, my favorite thus far that I've read for this year was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. Last year, one of my favorites was One Day in December by Josie Silver, and the year before that, I read The Love Quotient by Helen Hoang. So those are 3 that I would highly recommend for the romance category, and there is a little bit of adult content, at least in The Love Quotient, and a little bit in The Hating Game. In fact, I would say there's quite a bit in The Love Quotient, quite a bit of adult content, just so that my readers are aware. And as for fantasy will probably always be one of my absolute favorite subjects to read. I have loved fantasy books since I began reading. Harry Potter was one of the first series that I ever read with my mom. I was 7 years old when I started that series, and I will forever love it. it will always be in one of my top 5 favorites. Okay, so some other fantasy series that I've discovered and I have just fallen absolutely in love with are A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I'm sure my staff is sick of hearing me talk about this series now, but I've recommended it to many patrons here at Anna Porter Library, and I can't tell you how much positive feedback I'm getting from this series. So if you're looking for a new fun twist on fantasy and you're just not really sure where to go, I highly recommend just about anything written by Sarah J. Maas, but especially A Court of Thorns and Roses. Also, if you like romance in your stories, that will definitely be there. If you like a little bit less romance and more action and, war strategy and sabotage and adventure, I recommend the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I am currently reading that, and I am actually reading the 5th one now. I wasn't really sure what to read next after my last video that I posted on Wednesday, but I decided, what the heck, I'm going to go ahead and just finish this series. I've got 3 more books left to read in it, and I'm going to do a video for every one. So hopefully this next Friday I will do my Empire of Storms video, so stay tuned for that, YouTube. Another honorary mention is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. It's a classic, and I actually kind of read it, I read it all the way through 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and I loved it. It was wonderful. It's definitely not a modern read. It definitely has a little bit of an old-fashioned tone to it, but it's a classic, and you can't beat a classic fantasy. Alrighty, so those are the things, those are the genres that I have either typically always loved and will continue to love: fantasy, romance comedies, and contemporary. And books that I'm excited to read for 2020/2021, I'm trying to, as I mentioned before, broaden my horizons a little bit. And I'm going to focus a little more on literature-specific reads. For instance, I have read The Great Gatsby, and I really enjoyed it. I would like to reread it this year, just because it's been years since I read it. I believe I was in undergrad the last time I read it, maybe even in 2012, 2013. So it's been a while, and I'd like to get another fresh take on that. I would also like to finally read Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I know the story, but I've never actually sat down and read the entire book. And I'd also like to read Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Now, if you're like me, when I was a child, my mother would buy the children's versions of the Little Women books, and they were inserts about each sister, but I look forward to sitting down and actually reading the original copy, or the original story, I guess I should say, by Louisa May Alcott. As for American literature, as I've mentioned, I want to reread The Great Gatsby. I'd really like to read The Catcher in the Rye, The Handmaid's Tale, A Clockwork Orange, and 1984. Some of these books I've read most, if not all of them, and some of them I know that they're very relevant in today's society and they're very eye-opening, but when I read, I typically want to read to escape. That is my favorite aspect of reading. My favorite element is kind of being able to escape my own world and my own stresses and my own concerns, including those in politics and in terms of the economy and the world, and it's just a great way for me to kind of put all of that aside for a little bit, but I also recognize it's important to be informed and to be aware of the issues of today, and also to kind of see how people in literature responded to similar issues. So I think I'm going to finally just kind of push myself and make myself finally read some of these very important, thoughtful literature reads. So I look forward to that. And also, I love fantasy, but I also really enjoy dark elements of fantasy, so I think I'm going to focus a little more on dark fantasy literature this year. So one book series I've been planning to read for a while is A Darker Shade of Magic. So I'm looking forward to that. I also would like to read Ninth House and finally Six of Crows. And of course, at some point when I do videos for these books that I've read, I will include the author's name. Okay, guys, well, that's a little bit about me specifically, my journey into librarianship and why I fell in love with it. And if you have any other questions in terms about the career path specifically, or services that my library or your public library could offer, please feel free to reach out to me or give your own librarians a call. That's what we're here for, to answer questions and to be there for you when you're feeling lost. Okay, thank you so much for watching YouTube, and I very much look forward to discussing Empire of Storms with you next week by Sarah J. Maas. Have a great one. Happy weekend.